Hello. I've had a lot of questions from people about Module 1, so I thought I'd do a video and just give you a little idea of what we're really expecting from this video. So let's have a look. First of all, I'll just comment that we are talking about innovative curriculum design. And so from a curriculum perspective, what we can sort of look at that or I like to look at it in sort of three different ways. One is, how do you take the curriculum that you've been given and implement that in the classroom? If you look at it from another perspective, from perhaps a curriculum designer perspective, I used to be a curriculum consultant for a couple of different universities. And so I would be involved in actually writing the curriculum itself, determining what should go in, what are the learning objectives, and so forth. Some of you may be doing that, but most of you are going to be more focused on implementing a curriculum that you've been given. And so the third sort of aspect of that is somewhere in between there. A lot of teachers do, in fact, have a lot of leeway on how to implement the curriculum they've been given, or the curriculum that they have been given is quite loose. And so they can do quite a bit to really mold or bend that curriculum to the needs of their students. So keep that in mind as we look at what we're going to ask you to do for this assignment. Now, before we get involved in that, I just want to point out where we're going with this. So here's, if we look at the overall course, by the time we get to Module 3, we're going to be talking about how do you take risks or help your students take risks in the classroom. So to get to that point, I'm going to be asking you, or the course will ask you, to create your own curriculum framework or curriculum implementation framework. So you all have some kind of framework, whether or not you've clearly articulated it to yourself or to others. And so you're going to really think about how do you plan, and that's what comes out of Module 1. So let's go and jump into this assignment. So as I said, most of you are going to be really thinking about curriculum planning as taking the curriculum you've been given and thinking about, how do I implement this in my classroom? How do I bend it and mold it and open it to my students so that my students can really apply it to their own lives? And that's true whether you're teaching in early childhood with 5-year-olds, or if you're teaching in high school, or even at the post-secondary level. So there's some reading, so let's just jump through the module. I won't talk too much about the readings. It asks you to do 3, but there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I would read them all myself, but I know you're busy, so we've asked you to do 3. And think about, what are these telling you, and how do they compare to what you do now? And that's a key element that I'll come back to. So you do some readings, and then you open up this PowerPoint. So I have the PowerPoint open here. And as you read through, you should be capturing some key terms or key concepts around the approach or big ideas around teaching and learning in terms of the curriculum and what your role is as a teacher, for example, in terms of, are you facilitating that curriculum? Are you delivering it? Are you more of an expert? And that may vary on the discipline as well, because of course you do have some role as subject matter expert to actually teach your students some of the content. What about the pedagogic offerings? How do you implement some of this work in the classroom? What's expected of you? A lot of schools will adopt certain types of pedagogic approaches, and so you may be obliged to fit within those. And then the student experience, and I think that's where we're heading with much of this course, is how do we really improve that student experience? How do we help students see themselves in the curriculum, see some value in the curriculum? We always come back to that big question, why are we doing this? So if you can't answer that, then you need to step back and really think, well, why are we doing this? And ask yourself that. So when your students ask you why, you should really have a good answer for them. And the aesthetic. So this one's a little bit more vague. It talks about the nature or quality of the learning environment. And you might think about, well, what does it look like if someone were to come to my classroom and watch me teach and watch my students engage with each other and with me and with the curriculum? What would they see? So that might be quite intriguing for you. So as you do the readings, there's a little chart here so you can populate, or the slide, you can populate this slide with some of the key concepts that you see. Some of them may fit in one or more, and it may not always be clear which of these 4 categories your concepts fit into. So that's fine. You can think about that and move them around. And then think about which ones highlight key terms in green that you already focus on. So are you doing some of these things? Do you feel that you're really approaching your curriculum development in a thorough manner? And then finally, reconsider those and think, how might you improve upon, or if any of these terms or concepts appeal to you, how might you better apply those in your classroom? So once you've done all of that, then we come back here, and we just jump through here to the post. So now there's time to do a little bit of reflection. So there's some guiding questions for you. Do you already have a framework? As I mentioned, some people do, some don't, some maybe it's not clearly articulated, but you think you do. But if someone were to ask you to draw it or write it out or do some kind of flowchart, would you be able to do that? What considerations do you consider? How much consideration do you give to the students? Very important. How much consideration do you give to the curriculum or to the needs of the school, to your principal or a head of faculty that may be telling you to do the course or a project or something in a certain way? And what are your own priorities within that? So there's a concept called it matters who the teacher is, and I did a whole video on that concept. I'll share that with you as well. And so post that slide, that last one, and talk about first your strengths, and then secondly, how are you going to build on those strengths or improve upon some of the aspects. Here it talks about your stretches, but I like to think about this in a more positive light. What do you want to improve upon in your work? Not necessarily because you don't feel like you're doing it well already, but because you feel it's important to your work and you want to focus on it more. And you're going to revisit this, as I've pointed out in Module 2, when you start to do your framework. So keep that framework in mind. You will eventually design a framework, but spend some time to really think about the readings, current practices in curriculum design, and how those align with what you do. So someone asked me, should you do this and focus on keywords from the readings or your own keywords? And my answer was both. But first, think about what are common practices from the literature, and how do you feel your approaches align with those common practices? I'll come back to that framework in a few days, because you do have some time. That's not due until you'll put that framework up as a post. So the initial post is due Feb 1st. So you do actually have a couple of weeks for that. So we'll come back and revisit that assignment in a little bit. All right, that's quite a long video. Sorry for the length, but there you go. Thank you.